Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And I want to thank you so much for your support, for watching these, for sharing these when you think it blesses someone else. That's wonderful. And today I have a very special guest, and you'll notice I don't have any notes because I know this guy pretty well. I actually have been married to him for over a quarter of a century, and he has published a book. And I'm super proud. Stan wrote this poetry, and it was illustrated by Michelle Cameronth. And the illustrations and the book are so perfect. And it's a really fun story because the two of them never met each other, yet together they produced this incredible book. Stan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, sweetheart.
You are welcome. So give us a little bit of background of how you ended up to be so passionate about plants.
I have to blame my father. He would bring, when I was 3 years old, I had my first garden. He took me to a nursery, and the nurseryman went to him and asked what he wanted, and he said, well, you need to talk to my son. I was 3 years old. I already knew what I wanted. So I don't know, somehow my father instilled a love for plants. He used to stop along the roadside in California. We lived near the shore, and he would pick weeds. Turns out they were a wild mustard, and he'd take them home and cook them. I was very impressed with his love. He also always planted flowers and had flowers and liked to fool my mother and put plastic flowers on anything she planted so that she thought they would grow faster than they really did. He was kind of a comedian a little bit. I picked up some of that.
Maybe a little, maybe just a little, maybe just a little. Okay, so from the time you were 3, you had a passion for plants.
Yeah.
Go a little bit further. How did that show up in your life in your younger years?
Well, I can remember certainly being in high school and all my buddies having their, different sports posters in their rooms or Playboy magazines posted on their walls. And I had my walls plastered with leaves and pictures from Arizona highways, which was my favorite magazine at the time. I can't explain why. It was just, I loved them. I just loved plants, flowers in particular.
I tell you, I've been married to Stan, like I said, for over a quarter of a century, and I never understood his passion for plants until after he started writing poetry. And this book will make you think differently about plants and grow your interest. So you're a teenage boy with leaves on your wall.
Yep, pressed, of course.
Of course, and no adults noticed that and encouraged you to go that route?
I hate to say unfortunately, but I will say unfortunately, no. No, I didn't get any encouragement in that regard. My parents just were very proud of me. Whatever I did, they allowed me to do what I wanted. I was a good kid. And no, I don't even think I remember any mention of it. It was my room. I could do what I wanted with it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So my point being, guys, if you have someone that's young in your life and you see a passion in them, like a genuine passion, give them some guidance, give them some encouragement. So you did not have that encouragement. So what did you end up doing when you graduated high school?
Well, I went to college. I went back east to Springfield College. I was interested in American history and government. And so I went to Springfield College. They gave me a scholarship. And my objective was to see New England and go to all the sites and meet a lot of people from the East. And that's what I did. And, of course, look at the amazing flora in the East Coast because the colors are amazing in the fall. And I love that. I would just lay under trees and look at them and watch the little samaras, which are the seeds of the ash or the maple. Just watch them float to the ground. And I loved it. Yeah.
It's so hard to understand, and if you're not a plant person, there's no way you can understand. I can relate it because I love people the way that my husband loves plants, and so I do get it. I just don't get it, if you know what I mean. I don't quite get it. So you went to Springfield College. What was next?
I transferred to Berkeley, which was my original plan to go 2 years to Eastern school and go back home. And I was in the social sciences at the time. I didn't take my own interests seriously. I had no encouragement. I didn't know any better. I was trying to figure up from down. Okay. And Berkeley was a strange place to try to do that.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Where the world is represented.
Yeah. So what did you end up doing to make a living in your younger years?
Well, I fell back once I got out of Berkeley. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Actually, I dropped out in my senior year at Berkeley. Why? Because of the Vietnamese War and the chaos it was causing on campus. And I had no direction at the time. So I left figuring I'd get back when I had a clue. And I did. But it was 20 years later. By then I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a degree in plant biology. So I went back at that time.
Okay,
About 20 years
so
later.
the 20 years between the time you left school and went back to Berkeley, what did you do for a living?
I fell back on my experience that my father had introduced. My whole family was in construction, so I made my living in construction. I ended up building houses and working for others, and came to New Mexico, did the same thing, remodeled, and ended up working from some large construction firms here in Albuquerque.
Okay, so how many of you think that's a little bit odd to have a plant biologist who's passionate about plants building hundreds of homes? It's a whole different world. So what happened to take you off of that path where you're making good money building homes to going back to school after the age of 40?
I was an assistant superintendent for a large company in town, and I just saw the stress that the superintendent was under, and I said, is this what I want for the next 20 years or so? And I went, this isn't really what I want to be doing. And by then I knew what I wanted to be doing, because everywhere I worked in the state of New Mexico for a number of companies where I worked on many reservations, and I was in my spare time, and I was away from home a week at a time. So I would, the rest of the week I'd be out looking at plants, collecting plants, and reading books, and studying and learning Latin names and so forth. Even crazy things like driving down the freeway early in the morning, looking at a book, studying Latin names while I'm driving to Arizona, because there was no traffic. It was like 4 a.m.
Okay, so you're working this job, you've got it going on, you know what you want now, and your mom won the lottery?
No. She had mentioned actually she did win the lottery, except she didn't play her cards that day, or the numbers that day. But I thought about it, and I thought, what if she had won? What would we do? And my mother would have immediately gone, what do we do? Because it would have been overwhelming for her, even though she loved to play. And I do not care to gamble. But she did. So I thought about what I'd like to do, and it would be basically hire PhDs from all over the world to teach me things, because I love to learn. And I'm passionate about learning.
So here's another take home for you. Think your way to an epic life. The question that Stan asked himself was, if mom had won the lottery, and he is her only child, if she had won the lottery, what would I do? And I think we all need to ask ourselves that question. If money were not an issue, what would I do? Take away the limitations, and then your true passion can come to light.
Sure, yeah.
So your mom didn't actually win the lottery, but it was the catalyst to make you go, okay, this is what I want, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make it happen.
Right. Yeah, I've always wanted to. I've been been on the edge of our culture in my whole life, and a lot of things I haven't liked, a lot of things I love. I certainly love the freedom we have and the principles this country stands for. The practices all the time, not so happy with how I see people utilizing that freedom. But anyway, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it and pursuing it.
Okay.
And beholding, as you well know.
Yes.
So, I hear a lot of the people you've interviewed talking about, getting engaged and being here. And I'm pretty good at being where I'm at and not thinking about past or future.
Okay. So you graduate, you have a botany degree, you move back to New Mexico, then what happens?
Well, I applied for a job at the Biopark because it was just opening. And unfortunately for me, but very fortunately for my now good friend John Stewart, he got the job I wanted. So it took 5 years for another one like that to come up. And we applied. In fact, I think you get the credit for that. You said, hey, you need to apply for this job. In the meanwhile, I'd set up the landscaping company just so I didn't fall back into just doing construction, even though there was a lot of construction involved. It was just exterior. but I got to utilize my interest in plants. So the next job came up 5 years later. I applied and got the job.
Okay, so you worked at the zoo for 11 years.
Well, it was actually a biopark. Yeah, it included the zoo, the Botanic Garden, and Tingley, and actually 12 years, yeah.
12 years. Okay, so what were some of the really, I know, obviously, I don't need notes because I'm married to the man. I know that you did all the new exhibits. You did the Japanese garden, you did the fantasy garden, you did Tingley and all that stuff. Of all the stuff that you did there, what did you enjoy doing the most? Heritage Farm, maybe?
You mean which project?
Yes.
Which project did I enjoy doing the most? I don't know. I enjoyed my job the whole time, as you well know. The most challenging job, I guess I'll answer it this way, which is not the job I enjoyed the most. The job I did not want to do at all was to take on the irrigation project. Because I had a construction background and a botanical degree, I was given the task of being in charge of all of the irrigation at Tingley, which required 10,000 feet of pipe and all the fittings associated. And there's a great, interesting story associated with that, but I don't know if we want to go into that. But anyway, Tingley was something I didn't want to do, but I figured you either do it with a good attitude or quit. Do what's asked of you or leave. So I took it on and did it. And I'm proud that I did do it, but I didn't want to do it because I was dealing with pipe and construction. It wasn't plant related, even though it was for the plants, of course.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So was there anything that you really enjoyed? Any job that stood out that you really enjoyed? Project, job, whatever you want to call it?
I enjoyed everything I did. Ooh. But what? Go ahead.
Maybe you
can answer better than me.
When we thought we were getting pandas.
Well, that was cool. Yeah. So the mayor at the time was pursuing the idea of getting giant pandas, which would have been really cool. And I was given the task of finding which bamboo we could grow here. So I took that as a challenge to buy as many different bamboo I could find and see what would survive here, because it's so dry here. And it turns out most of them lived here and did well, but we were looking for one that would really reproduce well and be used for forage. And I found one. And nobody cares which one it is, but I know which one it is. And so we had bamboo all over the place. There was already bamboo at the gardens. My predecessor had a lot of bamboo but there wasn't a lot of diversity. So we ended up with at least 100 species, which was really cool, because as a botanist, I was interested in collection and showing people what could grow here. That was our mission, to be an example for people. What can you grow here? Okay. It was cool. That was fun. Yeah.
So, Mr. Schug.
Yes, Mrs. Schug.
What is your favorite plant?
Well, not everybody's going to like the answer to this one, but it's the dandelion. And you might ask why.
Why, Mr. Schug?
Well, when I went back east to college, I got to go to places like Vermont and look at pastures that were just filled with just vibrant, shocking yellow, just filled. And of course, everybody knows the dandelion. Of course, it's the nemesis to people that think they have to have a pristine lawn, which I don't think they should have to have that. But they're just so interesting for a lot of reasons. They're beautiful. They have the great parachute that all the kids in the world know about, and if they don't, I always like to teach them.
Can you explain the parachute?
Well, the parachute is what happens when the seed is being manufactured. It comes along with I'll use the word parachute because nobody wants to know the technical names for these things, but it allows the plant to spread throughout the world, and the dandelion is throughout the world. It's for someone to think that they know where it came from, good luck, because it's in every continent, including Antarctica in some places for some short periods of time, because it does float around the world. It's just beautiful to behold. And then, of course, there is the one thing I brought up in that poem was they have contractile roots. And what are those? Well, they're actually roots that as the plant ages, because it is a perennial, it lives several years, and every year, because they're so tasty, you can actually eat them, and a lot of animals eat them. The plant will protect its crown, or the growing portion, by pulling itself further into the ground every year. It's called a contractile root. And it's a very rare thing amongst plants, but it's very interesting. So for a lot of reasons, you can make wine out of the you can eat the leaves. You can make wine out of the flowers. It's been useful throughout history. The Romans used it a lot. I mean, it's been around forever. So it's a cool plant.
So it's also the plant, and when he's talking about the umbrella, what did you call it?
I call it the parachute.
The parachute.
It's
the
like
same
an umbrella,
thing, right?
same thing. Not the technical name.
Of course, I wouldn't jump out of a plane with an umbrella. However, when he's talking about that, that's the plant that kids pick and make a wish and blow.
Right.
Right. And so that design is incredible. What an incredible design.
It's a dispersal mechanism. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's everywhere.
Okay. Inside of a seed, this is one of the things that you've taught me that is just mind-boggling to me. Inside of a seed of an oak tree, of an oak tree seed, what's in that? What's inside of it?
The embryo. There's actually a poem in there about that, the acorn. And seeds can last for hundreds of years, perhaps thousands, but they're alive. So they're not in hibernation, but they're in the suspense. You have to keep in mind they are alive.
So there's an actual tree inside of
there is a minute little root, and it's a pre-root. That's what I called it, a pre-shoot. There's technical names for these things. So there's the component that will become the root and the shoot, and then the stem. Of course, I had that out of order: root, stem, shoot, and they're alive. No matter how old that seed is, unless it's past. Some seeds are viable for short periods of time, some for long periods of time. They're amazing. So there is a minute little tree inside
a baby
that.
Tree
inside
of a.
And actually, that's one of my favorite poems. That's in this book.
You wrote over 50 poems. This book has 13 of them.
Right.
You wrote over 50 poems over a period of time. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I've written poems my whole life, but of course, working at the Biopark, I'd go to the bookstore a lot, and I noticed there was an absence of plant-related material for kids, especially. So keep in mind, most of my poems were. My mission was to try to educate kids via their parents or with their parents, and actually, a little secret was to covertly teach the parents something, because a lot of people love plants, but they don't know very much about them. So when I wrote the poems, every poem that's plant-related, and most of them are, that I wrote, there was a little lesson in each one. But it was based for kids mostly, is what I wanted to, because I wanted to encourage other kids and educate them about plants, something that I didn't really get to have, and because I love them, I thought I wanted to share this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wrote these poems, and then what happened? How did you end up with this? Check this out, you guys. I mean, it's absolutely, the artwork.
The artwork is phenomenal.
You literally will not believe that the artist and the writer did not talk to each other at all to make this happen. Why did that happen?
It was a spiritual bond because of my wife is why it happened. Kara Schug, this book wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Kara Schug, because I wrote the poetry, she found the artist. I had actually had 3 artists that thought they would do this for me over the course of probably 3 years, and for one reason or another they declined to follow through. And I was going to get around to it eventually. Probably not. But you met Michelle, and you said, and you tried every which way you could to get us to meet. We didn't, because you sold her a house, right?
I sold her house.
You sold her house, and she moved, and we just didn't get together. But I am so impressed with her poetry. I am so impressed with her artwork. More than I am with my poetry. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, her artwork is just phenomenal.
It truly is. When she would send her artwork in advance, and I was just blown away. I knew he would love it. I just knew he would. So
you get the credit for this book, really?
Well,
I just wrote the poems.
He just wrote the poems. One of your big driving forces for writing this and having a published book was not for the public.
True.
Who's it for?
For my grandkids, and to have a legacy. Something. I never got to meet my grandparents, except for my grandmother, of course, who was very dear to me, but my grandfathers in particular. And I always heard stories about them, and they were always my heroes. And I just wanted to have something that was lasting for grandkids, great-grandkids, great-great-grandkids, something personal to me.
So this book is dedicated to our 6 grandkids.
Yeah.
And they all have a signed copy from their papa, or Hops, or Pop. He's got all kinds of different names.
That's right. There's more names than that, actually.
The names we're not going to put on the podcast. Okay, so you came home one day.
Yes.
And I wasn't there, and there was a package, and you opened it up, and it was a couple of these.
Right. And I was floored. Yeah.
You thought it was some other book, right? You didn't even realize it was your own book.
Yeah, who sent me these books? And then I see my own name on it. I go, what? Kara Schug.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah.
So of all the poetry that you've written, now I will tell you, Michelle, who did all the incredible illustrating in here, we literally did not ask for any changes at all, except for just one. And this was Stan's brilliant idea, because all throughout you'll see that the ant in each one of these poems, the ant is the one who's teaching the story, teaching the extra credit stuff. And so the ant at the very end, the ant's very involved in all of the pages, and at the very end there was nothing. And Stan thought, there's got to be a really cool ending. There just has to be. So this was his contribution. He asked her to put this on there.
The end.
The end. You have to have an ant butt at the end. You know, it's just at the end, you got to have the end. Yeah. So if someone is curious about this book and they're a little bit on the fence about buying it or not buying it, what do you think that someone would get out of this book?
Well, that's what I get to find out. You know, I don't know. I know I've enjoyed my poetry, and you have, and you've encouraged me, but I really have no idea whether there's any social value to it. Like I say, I wrote it for my grandkids, really. And I'm not normally a self-promoter, so we'll see. Let's see where it goes. But I am going to take it to the Biopark and see if they like it. So.
All right. So, guys, if you are interested, there is a link at the bottom. You can purchase this book on Amazon, and we would love to have your feedback on what you think of it. Thank you for joining us. Any last words of wisdom for our folks before we let you go?
Behold things in your life. Take a moment to look outside yourself. We're always so busy in our brains, you know, but the natural world is wonderful to behold. That's what I would say.
All right. Good advice, guys. Go do some beholding. Thanks.
Yeah.